Hey guys, today we're here with Matt Weaver, leader of the Matt Weaver team. And I'm not going to go into too many of the accolades, although I'll let him do that. Hey guys, welcome to Living in South Florida Does Not Suck. This is Andrew Burr from the Andrew Burr Group at the 𝐂𝐲𝐧𝐧𝐞𝐭 Company. We can't wait to get started. But Matt has been one of our top lending partners for many, many, many years, because he is, without a doubt, one of the most innovative lenders or originators, or what's the right thing?
Originator works.
Yeah. That I've ever worked with, and he has done some pretty amazing things. We've closed deals in extremely short periods of time, even with FHA loans, and he's come in and saved a couple of deals over the years for me. So. Matt, is there? You want to give him your elevator speech? Is there something? Would you like to give him the top three things to know about Matt Weaver and his team here?
Well, it's a wonderful thing, and thank you all. First of all, thank you, Andrew, for the opportunity here to be here together with you all, and thank all the audience that's listening here today. It's an honor to be here. I'm close to 30 years in the mortgage industry here locally in the South Florida market. I've had the amazing fortune of helping just over 30,000 families buy a home. My entire practice is built on working with real estate agents and providing them the maximum value that I can to them, and of course their home buyers. So it's been a wonderful career. I work with great partners like yourself, so it's an honor to be here today.
All right, well, thank you very much. And I think that there is one recently. You are the number one mortgage originator for, is it just first-time loans, or is it loans period in the state of Florida? Like your team.
Well, so we're honored, we're humbled to say that 4 times here, number one in the state of Florida, and also number one in the nation for 2023 for most transactions closed.
That was the new one. Most of the nation. Yeah, most of the nation sounds good. I hope to get the most of the nation one day. So I'm not quite there yet, but so anyways, you know what you're talking about. The reason that I wanted to have you here is because, as we know, or as some of you may not know, there's been sort of a huge sea change in the real estate industry. We've had some new laws passed nationally that have affected a lot of states way more, quite frankly, than they have Florida. Right. There's only 2 major changes in Florida, actually 2 changes in Florida. One is that we're no longer allowed to show the offer of compensation that a seller is offering to a buyer's agent on the MLS. And now everybody legally has to sign buyer brokerage forms, which we've always kind of used on our team anyways, just because they make good sense business-wise. But the big question is, how has this affected buyers, I guess, from your side, buyers' ability to purchase if they do in fact have to pay a buyer broker fee or commission or whatever we're going to call it? We still haven't even figured that out yet, really. We got 3 different words for it now. But how does that affect their purchasing property? Because my understanding is that it kind of hurts them a little bit on what they can actually afford to purchase. Is that accurate?
Well, I have to say, to start from the beginning here, I think the changes, specifically the buyer broker agreement and agent compensation, I think it's one of the greatest changes the industry could have possibly had, both for the consumer and the realtor. I do a lot of trainings and a lot of seminars for great agents to help them kind of look at it from a different perspective. And what do I mean by that? If we stop and think about it here for just a moment, 50% of the real estate industry was under a hiring basis. You would demonstrate your value, you would present yourself to a homeowner, and a homeowner would make a decision by signing a listing agreement.
And the rest was scrubbed and purchased by Zillow and sold to agents, or whatever.
Right.
That's
The other 50% of the industry was under a verbal basis. Buyers hired agents verbally. So if you think about that right out the gate, it didn't make a whole lot of sense. So in today's market, of course, to hire a buyer's agent, a buyer agent now has to present themselves, present their value, and a buyer makes a decision if they want to hire the agent by signing a buyer broker agreement. I think that makes good sense, like what you said before.
Oh, I agree. So, and again, it's something that we've always done at my team, because quite frankly, it's a business, and I can't afford to go out and show people property if they're going to have their aunt in Orlando sign a deal or whatever it happens to be.
Right.
And it is going to level the playing field a little bit, because now. And to be clear, just so you know, I don't know if you've watched my podcast before, but I am verbally not the greatest fan of the industry, and a lot of realtors and a lot of my peers are, so I don't know that this is actually going to fix the core root of the problem, but it's going to help, because a lot of those agents that can't prove their value or just, aren't functional enough to get through that process will probably leave the industry, and that will end up benefiting, in my opinion, agents like myself that do a lot of business, and we try to do it in a very professional and conscientious manner. That being an aside, because I don't want to involve you in my my views. I guess the question that I'm asking though is this: I mean, understanding that we are now going to have to use these forms, and there's always been one of the biggest, and you've heard this, guys, if you're on my thing before, the buyers never had to use a certain agent, sellers never had to use a certain agent. There's for sale by owners. There's always. And commissions have always been negotiable. The whole crux of this thing is now that we as agents, and once again my team and myself have always done this, had said, hey, this is what the recommended amount is or whatever, but you can always choose your amounts. But again, the big concern that at least most of the agents that I hear from, and even some of my team agents, are, hey, let's say if Chala is going to buy a house and she's pre-approved for $500,000, but the seller says, no, we're not going to pay anything to them, so Chala ends up absorbing that commission, then let's just make it easy math and say it's $10,000. Right. Say she's going to pay $10,000 for the buyer broker service. How much does that actually reduce her pre-qualification? Like if that's what she's max qualified for and she has to pay $10,000 additional out of pocket up front, what is the matrix on what she's actually eligible to purchase at that point? That's that's sort of the bigger
multi-headed process here, multi-headed snake, I should say. So the first thing that, in my opinion, when you stop and think about this for just a moment, the benefit to the consumer of a buyer-broker agreement is now you have a more committed agent on your team.
Absolutely.
Rather than someone who is loosey-goosey, maybe part-time and so on. So there's a big benefit to that.
Working for you from the beach.
100%. Mm-hmm. So I think a buyer-broker agreement benefits the consumer that way. The second way that I think we can handle that part, that what you're describing, I think what will end up shaking out is, and we're already starting to see this right now, is buyers' agent compensation has always been built into the sale price.
Correct, and I think it's always going to stay that way. And it's just going to be done in a different way, personally. But
since the dawn of time.
Right.
So as an example, most buyers wouldn't want to come up with closing costs if they could roll it into the mortgage. Do we agree?
Of course.
Okay, so same with buyer.
That was going to be a follow-up question.
Right.
Yeah.
But same with buyer agent compensation.
Right.
So in other words, when a listing agent is being difficult or saying the seller's not willing to pay, well, then it just sounds like we need to figure out what the seller's net desire is.
Correct.
And so that is what ends up happening. So as an example of that $500,000 transaction, so then maybe the sale price is $510,000. And of course, then maybe the seller would be more inclined to pay a commission. But I have to tell you something, in my opinion, Andrew, and I think it's important. It's not necessarily what the seller is willing to pay the buyer agent. It's what the buyer agent is willing to accept to bring the buyer.
Correct. No, I agree with that.
That's a mindset.
No, I agree with that.
That I think the audience should understand.
Right. So, and I guess I put you on the spot on that because that's the direct question that I've got the most so far, right? When I'm sitting with people that are like, well, what happens to my, and I'm like, well, you have to talk to your lender, which in many cases is you anyways, or your team, but we'll swing around the back on that one. I'm going to bring it up again in a different way a little bit later, try to trick you. But the reality is that on that basis, so, and this is something that in any of my past customers will tell you that when I sit down with them, my explanation on commissions has always been this. There's two different ways you can look at it. Some people look at it as a I have to pay this much commission that's coming out of my money, or you can look at it the way that I've always looked at it, which is my concern and my job as a realtor, if you're the seller, is to put the most money net in your pocket at the end of the sale. Typically, and not even typically, historically, and if you look at the statistics, paying a buyer agent fee, and especially once you get up at multi-million dollar deals, if you're not paying 3%, I'm sorry, it's just not. There's a lot of agents that aren't showing your property. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but that's the reality of it. And then a lot of agents in that level will really work really hard to get a deal done at 3%, right? So if you're gonna get 7% for paying 3%, then I think it makes sense. Right. But it's a math concept that not everybody can get their head around. And again, on the other side, on the buyer side now, the question has come up, twice to me. Once their team agent, one to me, was that specific question. But at the end of the day, a buyer has a finite amount of money to spend however it gets spent.
Correct.
Right? So that's always going to drive what they're going to ultimately pay for a home.
Right.
Right? I think that the semantics of it, just bringing that to the forefront, and also taking away the ability to say, hey, look, we understand the value of offering 3% or 2.5% or whatever, over another percentage. I think we've taken away that part of the benefit to the seller. Anyways, I do tend to ramble at times, in case you didn't notice. Let's assume that we're going on an even playing field, and that upfront money, if it comes out of the quote unquote buyer's pocket, doesn't affect their purchasing power. What is the largest change you think this is going to actually bring about, if any, to your profession, to lending? Is there going to be, is Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac going to look at it and go, well, we have to now maybe make a caveat for that sort of thing? I know we've just gotten brand new forms this week that have to do with seller credit to cover buyer. I mean, it's
right.
Because there is some sort of thing, but I'm not sure. Is that something that's already happening, or?
So the way lending looks at these changes, they've not changed their stance whatsoever, because they really do believe that the free market will just determine what will take place there.
Okay.
I think we have this messy middle. Mm-hmm. Where it's not necessarily so clear as to what agents should be doing. But I think if we look 8 to 12 months out, it's going to be very clear and concise. Here's my buyer. Here's our compensation. There's going to be counter offering taking place to get to the seller's net and or what they want to sell for, and then they're going to meet in the middle. So
and what the buyer's willing to pay.
And it's going to really be kind of that simple, I believe.
Okay.
So as far as
unless it's VA, because but that's a separate story.
So getting back to lending, they've not changed their parameters whatsoever. So example, FHA has always allowed up to 6%. For seller concessions, they still allow 6% today.
Right, and that's
and compensations above and beyond that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, and that would compensation outside of
lending compensation. Realtor compensation.
Realtor compensation. Okay, outside. Okay, that's what I was saying. I want to make sure we're straight on that. Now VA did have to change their rules. They had to relax their rule as far as what the buyer can and cannot pay. Because of this. I know there's a lot of controversy around that. Can you explain from your perspective exactly what that changes? Because I know what I've heard from other lenders, right. But as a veteran,
thank you for your service.
Thank you, but I feel like this whole thing kind of disenfranchised veterans a little bit on this particular subject.
Yeah, VA was in a tricky spot, right? So what do you do? How do you satisfy this?
Right.
You can't take away the right for a veteran to buy a home. I think, again, this is all very short-lived. I think the shelf life to this is extraordinarily short-lived.
Even on the VA mandate?
I think across the board.
Okay.
I think what is happening here is you got this middle ground where it's kind of the wild, wild west happening, but it'll end up shaking itself out to where a listing agent's going to list a property. They're going to present to a seller what their share is going to be. Then they're going to put it to the open market. And the open market is going to bring an offer with a desired compensation, and the seller's going to make a decision.
Right.
And that's like 2.0 of this, in my opinion.
Okay.
And so if you think about that for a moment, let's do it, be honest. We are really teetering, if not already, into a buyer's market.
Oh, it's a buyer. Well, in my opinion, it's a buyer's market here in Palm Beach County right
now. That's right.
Definitely.
So the buyer has the value today.
Yeah, and that makes it very different, right? Because of, the lot, and and that's also one of the difficulties of from a professional standpoint of being a realtor right now, is that everybody kind of remembers the halcyon days of COVID, right, when you just put it up and 15 million offers came. Well, that world is gone, unfortunately. Correct. And explaining that and being able to explain it in a way that makes sense with actual statistics and facts, right, is a thing that's very difficult for a lot of people. Fortunately, we've been able to so far haven't had any issues with that. But again, to me, it's my mindset, and what I've always tried to convey to my customers, especially on the seller side, has always been, if you take commission out of the equation, right, which you're not ever going to take it out, but if you really look at what's most important, is it most important to put the most dollars in your pocket at the end of the day, or go around to your friends at the bar and go, hey, I only paid whatever percent in commission? Because in the end of the day, we want to get you the most money in your pocket, right? Right. And as a professional realtor who I have a team. This is a career for me. I'm not a one-off. A lot of realtors do 1 or 2 deals a year, but this is my my profession, my career has been for a long time. My value proposition is that I consistently sell people's properties for higher dollars than other agents, or that they put more in their pocket, right?
They net more.
They net more, right? And that's again that so I don't even like the idea of calling it all the cost of. Well, it's not the cost of the sale; it's part of the sale. And look, there's there's going to be. We could all do this for free, right? You would do it for free, wouldn't you? Right? Yeah, not me. But the bottom line is that it's like any business, right? There's always going to be a cost of doing that kind of business. I personally, again, feel like the transactional model that we had, and we used to lead on the forefront of, hey, this is what they're offering.
Right.
This is what they're offering, because we knew that was going to bring them So I think that's going to be one of the toughest things for people like myself. I mean, we're figuring it out, but now it's a different world on that as well.
Right.
So that's why I'm kind of ambiguous about whether this is a good thing or not. I know that the attorneys made out pretty good.
They made out pretty well.
33% commission on $4 billion, and then they want another $104 million in expenses.
Yeah, not a bad payday.
Yeah, not a bad payday for. Jeez, I'm in the wrong profession. Anyways, so I guess, and I do have some notes here.
Please.
And listen, guys, you guys are used to this now too, because I can't see the end of my. All right, so one of the other questions that I have gotten, and again, I'm relaying these to you, whether they're easy questions or right questions or wrong questions, and this is from customers from both sides. Do you think this helps the seller? Do you think this helps the buyer, or do you think, again, we already kind of got your answer, but if it helps one more than the other, who does it help? The new changes, and again, it's only two things here in Florida. But.
I think it helps the buyer and the buyer agent. I think buyer agents have been used and abused for years.
Well, I think it helps the buyer agents that are competent buyer agents.
Well,
yes, I agree. I agree.
But
and the buyers.
I think assuming someone knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
I think it helps the buyer, and I think it helps the buyer agent. It creates loyalty between the two parties.
Yeah.
It creates more of a standard in where they have to operate from.
Agreed.
Okay, versus just, I'll work with you, and you.
Yeah.
And I think buyer agents stand to earn more compensation. In fact, I know that if they know how to present themselves well.
Oh, no, I agree. Again, my team and myself, we've always used buyer agency forms. I don't say not every deal, if it's a personal referral. Like if you came to me and said, hey, I want you, then I'm not going to, but typically we use them anyways. And I do agree that from a buyer's perspective, it's, it should be more comforting that you actually have something in writing saying, hey, this is what this guy's going to do for me, or supposed to do for me. So far from the buyer side, honestly, I've got more engagement from potential buyers than previously, and some of it's because they've gone to other agents and they just haven't been able to explain to them in a way that made the buyer feel comfortable. Hey, what's going on? Right. So again, from a professional standpoint, from a business standpoint, I think all of this is going to benefit people like myself. But I'm not sure that. Honestly, I'm not sure that it benefits the buyers necessarily, and I think that relates to not benefiting the sellers. I mean, we'll see. My personal feeling and my professional feeling is that I don't know this is going to be the best thing for the public, and that's what it's supposed to be. Right. So, but we'll just see where that goes. Purchasing power. So we kind of talked about purchasing power. So I want to ask you the question again in a different way,
please,
because it's more of a structural question. And this has come up several times since this started. Because when I sit down with people and I explain to them, look, this percentage may come out of your pocket, right? So we need to understand that we need to, be cognizant of that. And there's a lot of moving parts in this, people, as far as when we sit down and talk about how buyers, how things are going to work. And again, there's different ways for the compensation to be paid. And quite frankly, the people that weren't going to offer compensation to a buyer's agent before, they're still not going to. But we haven't run across any sellers that have said no, we don't want to do that. And we haven't, with our buyers, we haven't run across a single opportunity yet where the seller hasn't been more than happy to pay the buyer's commission. So let's be clear on that. But because I don't understand the answer to the question, I'm going to ask you it again.
Please.
If Chava has to take $10,000 more out of her pocket on a $500,000 purchase, and you don't have to give me exact numbers, and that's what she's maximum approved for. You've sat down. This is the 500 is what she can. That's all she can spend. That's it. That's the tippy top of the mountain. And she has to take an additional $10,000 out of her pocket. Does that lower that $500,000 approval, or does it not? And is it a big effect or a very small effect? I understand what you're saying about how we can get around that with it. So, but what is the actual matrix and math?
It wouldn't change her loan approval amount. What would change is that she has additional cash to close, so she just has to come up with more money. So could that change her overall profile of buying?
Well, that's it. Exactly. That's the point. Like, does it change the DTI and stuff like that? I mean, it
won't affect the DTI, because if she's approved for $500,000, it would affect, let's say, the cash to close.
Cash to close. Okay.
So she would need additional funds to cash to close. So now the question becomes, could we lower the down payment to offset that?
Okay. All right. So So typically, it's not as big of an issue as most of my buyers think it may be.
I don't think it'll be an issue at all.
I don't think it'll be an issue at all. All right, good. It's a good answer.
I really do believe that.
That's a good answer.
I think it's a great benefit to the community, and I really don't say that easily.
No, that's fine. But I do appreciate the answer, because it's something that I've been struggling to answer it confidently. Like, I've been kind of, I don't think it's going to be that, but when I got to say I don't think, that means I don't know.
Right.
So I appreciate the clarification on that. Which also, and we can, just so you guys, just because we want to confuse you, we're going to sit here and start using things like DTI, LTV, and all these different terms that you probably don't know and shouldn't be expected to know, just to make it more confusing. Okay, and listen, I appreciate the candor in the conversation, because I feel more comfortable now going to my customers and expressing my confidence level on that. I don't think it's going to matter much, right? Because that's kind of what I thought.
Right.
But I thank you for the reinforcement.
No, with pleasure. I think the understanding is that 99% of buyers would rather have costs built into a sale price.
Yeah, and
if we go into that with that type of mindset, now the seller has to make a decision.
Just a different way of building.
Agents are having to use a different muscle. So let's say, how many years have you been in the industry?
I think it's 18.
Okay, so for the past 18 years, the course of action was through the MLS or by calling, or however you typically through the MLS. What is the compensation you're offering me?
Oh, it's now calling. Trust me.
Okay,
man, I can't. My phone just rings off the hook incessantly.
See, that's where it's interesting. Because I don't think agents should even do that.
I'm not disagreeing with you on that, but that is the way that it works.
It's what the buyer is willing to compensate you, put it into your offer, and make the offer.
I am not disagreeing whatsoever, and I think it may end up evolving that way. But right now, it is not the way that it works, and that is not the way it has historically worked.
Correct. It's a different muscle.
Yeah,
it's the reverse now.
Yeah, and like I said, we'll see how that shakes out. But my battery gets lower on my phone every day. I mean, that's a blessing and a curse for holding listings.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, and this has always been sort of contextually accurate. And again, I don't want to get into who's this going to hurt and who's this going to help. We're going to a little bit, but my more astute customers. And I'm not saying just in price wise, but maybe a little more educated and a little more. They are looking at this in one way and reacting in one way. And then my younger folks that they don't have any reason to have any context. They've never bought or sold a house. Their life experience is very short. They haven't been through all this stuff. They're the ones that, and I don't even, what is it, child Gen Z? What are you, Gen Z? Gen Z? So Gen Zers are really blowing up the market right now, but they are very confused by all this, and some of them are scared of it. I mean, they're literally afraid.
I believe it.
And I think that now, even more than ever, their appreciation of having somebody to help them guide them through the process is even more than it maybe was for generations before. Because generations before didn't understand enough to know that they should want or need that, right? The Gen Zers do, because they're on Facebook, social media, and this stuff's all over. And anyways. Again, I tend to ramble a little bit here. Let me get back on track, see if I have any other specific questions for you. To get back to the VA point, do you think that the VA is going to permanently change? I mean, I hear you saying it's going to wash out, but how's that going to look on a piece of paper when it comes to the VA mandate?
I think they're going to play it by ear. I think they're going to watch how the markets settle.
Right.
We go back to that crystal ball again. I think over the next 8 to 12 months, it's going to be business somewhat as usual, just in a different format.
Okay.
And so that's why if you take a look at the seller concessions for closing costs, none of them change their position.
Yeah. No, I agree. But I know that I'm on a couple of VA boards with different stuff, and there's a lot of veterans are like a little pissed off, and they're like, this seems like this just took a benefit that we earned by being veterans and just said, nah, you don't need that.
Right.
So, anyways, I guess that's, I know some of these are tricky subjects to get into, we're having a third rail conversations here, but it's just, it's something that has been, there's been a lot of conversation, and most of it, the vets are not super happy about it. It's, which is kind of.
Well, I would think a lot of buyers are not happy about it only because of all the misdirection it's taken.
Well, yes, and I agree, and not only that, but the lack of direction to agents. We're still getting new direction. Like, oh, we forgot about this. Here's what we're going to do. Like
last minute content.
Oh my God, that's like the new forms. The new forms that came out last week. I think it was the end of last week. Right. Oh, here's new forms to address this issue that we just never, and I think there's going to be a certain amount of that too. But anyways, but back to in general terms, like I said, I think it's going to be better for me business wise. I don't know necessarily what it'd be better for the public or not, but we're going to find that out. And I made it a little short earlier that right now that you were a month and a couple weeks, you wouldn't know there was any changes.
Correct.
At least as far as the way that the business is, because the business is driven by different, drivers, because I'm lacking the vocabulary for the word I wanted right now. But the things that push the business are going to still push the business the same way that they did before.
Correct.
Whether or not these rules are in place, not because bottom line is this: people still need to make changes in their life. They need to sell their home so they can move on to the next step of their life. They need to buy a home so they can raise their family. They need to, put shelter over their head, yada, yada, yada. So those are the things that are still going to drive the market. I think a lot of the question is how are us realtors going to play inside that matrix, right? Right. And that's one of the benefits of working with somebody like you that has always been on the forefront of creativity in the marketplace to not only benefit the public, but to benefit agents. You've always been an agent-forward guy.
Yes.
Do you even do refis?
We have a separate arm of the team, but we never lose focus of our customer.
Yeah, and that was one of the big things that I think you really shown. Yeah, you really shown. You were in the spotlight for agents during the COVID frenzy because, man, there were refis out there like easy money. You just get it, but you never stopped being relentless on the focus to agents, which was appreciated, and obviously probably a good business move as well, particularly now that the refi market dried up.
And interestingly enough, it might be coming back after today.
No, I know. So let's talk about that, right? Yeah. The big news, the second biggest news in real estate, and probably since COVID, I would think. During COVID, and I think the 3% range was always a mistake. I thought it was a knee-jerk reaction. I thought, wow, why are we doing this, right? It was a boon to a lot of people temporarily.
Right.
And then we paid the price.
Correct.
Right? And now that we've paid the price, I think we may go back to, and I believe we will, and this is a larger matrix thing. So you and I have both been through some bubbles and bursts, right? And this was not really a bubble and burst, but it was a pretty interesting cavitation. Historically, 3.5% roughly appreciation year over year. Then you get into the aughts or the early 2000s, where you want this thing, and then we get back to that 3.5, and then we got COVID. Now we're going to go back to the 3.5. The 3.5 is going to be up here now instead of there because we gained so much, and that's not going away, particularly in South Florida, unless people decide that South Florida sucks or something. They don't want to come anymore. But I think we're going to go back to that 3.5% appreciation on homes, roughly, okay, for a period of time until some other great, catalyst comes along to change it. But with lending, I fully expect that we will go, and the reality is that in a historical context, even when rates went to 7%, they weren't that damn bad.
Right.
I remember the first house that I bought. I don't know what year it was, 90s, 2000, late 90s, early 2000s. No, it was before that. Was it early 90s? Whatever. I was super happy with a VA loan to get under 10%. Because 10% was like, wow, it's down to 10%. So anyways, but I think that we'll probably end up falling somewhere in that mid fives. And this is where your crystal ball is going to be way stronger than mine.
Okay.
But I assume that we're going to get somewhere in that mid fives, and that's probably where we're going to stay for quite some time. Does that seem like an accurate guess?
Well, it'll be interesting to see. So here we are today.
I mean, I expect you to know what the Fed's thinking, what they're going to do. I expect you to know all these things, which I know you don't, but no pressure, yeah. But your best guess. I mean, that's...
Well, here we are, September 17th. Okay.
Yes.
So interestingly enough, we'll make it,
2.55.
Right. We've been in an ascending interest rate environment for 3 years. So this marks 3 years, September 2024.
Yeah.
So it's reasonable to believe anywhere between a 25 to 50 basis point cut to the federal prime rate today at 2 o'clock. And then the biggest thing, though, is really looking.
You got a crystal ball on that, just to cut you off? You 2.55?
Most are. Well, J.P. Morgan, the largest financial institution on planet Earth, is putting 50%.
Yeah, and that's
or 50 basis points, I should say. So
I think that's what everybody's betting on. But
okay.
Anyways,
right. So, the really thing, if you really want to pay attention to something today, you want to pay attention to the notes that there's going to be going over the press conference at 2:30 p.m. That's actually more important.
Yep.
So interest rates have been going down leading up to a cut, which is normal.
Yep.
That's the market pricing in the cut. With all that said, I think the Federal Reserve did a great job over the past 3 years. In putting it as a sideways market. They didn't crash anything, but they had to bring down what was occurring prior. So I think they did a fairly decent job, despite the fact of me doing less mortgages.
No, listen, I think it was a Herculean task, and like I said, the whole 3% thing I think was an aberration that probably shouldn't have occurred to that level, and I think that there was a pay the piper. That was going to, it just had to happen because 3% isn't viable for anybody. Right. In the long term.
Market cycles usually last about 2.5 to 3 years. So this month is 3 years.
Yeah.
So what I believe is I think we're going to see rates continue to fall. I think we're going to see a 5 in front of it. I think that's the number that's going to trigger a homeowner to say, I can sell.
Right.
And I think we're going to see a different market over the next 6 to 12 to 18 months, a more bullish market. And that would just be apropos to the last 3 years of having more of a sideways and choppy market.
Yeah, and I tend to agree with you. I've been talking for several months on what I call the switch. There's going to be something that turns a switch. Now, I'm a little more vague about what I think it's going to be because I think presidential elections and all that kind of stuff, and ultimately the market's going to decide when that switch flips, right? The buyers will largely, I think, drive that in this context, and I think dropping the rates is going to be a catalyst. Is it going to be the switch catalyst, or is it going to be the rates are down and now the election's over? So there are in my mind, but there's going to be, and when we see that, then what we're going to see is a mini boom market because there's so much pent up buyer demand. And then, and right now, quite frankly, as we've discussed before, it's a buyer's market, right? There's a lot of people that have now had their homes on the market for many months because the buyers have been holding. It's like racehorses being put in the box, right? Correct. And then we're just waiting for that bell to ring and for them to break, right?
And that bell is monetary policy.
The bell is monetary policy, although, again, my experience is that presidential election years have always muddled the water so much that you never really can predict. But I think that we are going to see we're going to see some action with the rates on for sure. Right. I've already been, and to you buyers out there, if you're watching this, and we'll get this out as soon as we can, unlike, a lot of the stuff rolls out on our podcast, 4 months later, whatever the hell it is, but this is more, you need to be making your decisions now because here's the thing. This guy right here, we put something under contract today. Let's say we do it today, okay? The rates drop today later. Right? He's not locking. He doesn't have to lock your rate. You can lock your rate in the future. Now, obviously, in most cases, lenders will always say, you want to lock your rate as soon as you can so you get it in and all that sort of stuff. Well, in this case, we're pretty damn sure rates are going to come down. But if you make that purchase now, then when everybody else goes, hey, the rate's down now, let's go get it, you've already put yourself in the driver's seat because you were in there, and I think you got a couple of weeks on that matrix, honestly, but it's going to happen. Because once everybody starts getting out into the market, then you're going to be facing that competition kind of like you faced before. And, if you can go in and make your decision without all that competition, why wouldn't you?
Right.
Does that make sense?
Right. Oh, 100%.
And it's, gambling on a rate used to mean something different, right? In a market like this and with what's going on with the rates, it's not really much of a gamble. We know they're going to come down.
Right.
The question is how much.
Right.
So get ahead of the curve. That's
and trying to sharpshoot a bottom on anything is not a fun bet.
No. And listen here, and the reality of any particularly in real estate. So real estate is a very historically slow-moving target, except for when it's not. And there's very few times, and those few times tend to be, very busy times for agents and stuff like that. But they tend to be also very stressful times for both buyers and sellers. And nobody's going to be able to pinpoint anything, right?
Right.
But also going in with blinders on and not understanding the matrix of what's going on right now in the like you said, the fiscal world and in the world of real estate doesn't do you any good either. So there's a certain amount of, okay, we have to make an educated decision on what the future holds, let's say for the next 3 months. Right. And I think it's easier now to do that than it has been for quite some time.
Right.
So anyways, that's where I'm at on that. Do you have anything to add to that little part? Or? I mean, from your perspective, I don't know. I mean, you're obviously much more smarter than me and more in tune with the lender side of things because that's what you do.
Right.
I mean, is there any?
I think it's buyers purchase off of monthly payment.
Always.
It's the reason why we've seen 2020 do its thing.
Everybody does.
Here right now, what they want to do is they want to spur buying activity. So they're going to, government intervention brings down rates, makes it more attractive to borrow money, makes it more attractive to buy things. From the selling perspective, you see, if it's all a psychology game. If someone is at 2.5% to 3%, on a 30-year fixed rate in their existing home.
Right.
And all of a sudden rates went to 6.5%.
That's
you see, that to them
massive.
It's too big of an adjustment.
No, I agree.
But if you take it away from them for several years and bring it back down to 5.5%, now psychologically,
much smaller jump.
They'll deal with it.
Yeah, I agree. And quite frankly, though, right now, and it depends on which side of your mind you're thinking this from. We're not hurting for inventory like we were. There are listings on the market. There are, and this is, so this, you may have a partial relation to this, but not really. The biggest problem that I think that we have right now with our inventory too, is that we still have agents that are going out there and saying, and pushing the theory that we're still in a COVID market, and they're, I can get you $800,000 for your house when your house is only worth $700,000, but they don't care because that's what they're doing to get the listing, right? So with the imagery that buyers are looking at, because buyers look at portals, right? It's just what it is. Homes.com, Realtor.com, Zillow, pick your portal, and that's an interesting conversation which we may or may not get into, how they're having to change their business model. But they're very confused about where we are, right? Because they see stuff. And even in the same neighborhood, there'll be two similar houses, and one's listed for $800,000, one's listed for $699,000.
Right.
And they go, well, the $699,000, what's wrong with that house? Instead of, that is actually market priced. Right. And so there's a lot of interesting. So that isn't helping the process either. But I think we're working through that finally now too. As a matter of fact, but now it's falling leaves, right? So because all the prices are dropping, and some are dropping huge. Well, a lot of that is people that were priced way ahead of the market because they were priced incorrectly for a multitude of reasons. So I do think the next, and this goes back to your 9 to 12 months. I think the next 9 to 12 months are going to be a great equalizing factor in the market. I think that there will be a lot of answers to the new rules. The questions of the new rules answered. And I also think that people will finally start to understand, or not people, realtors, where we're at in this whole marketplace world now, because that's been one of the biggest struggles. What was I saying? So turning it to a different specific subject, because Chala always brings this up. Condos.
Yes.
Don't we love condos these days?
Do agents and buyers love condos these days? We have, it's an interesting set of circumstances with condos.
Yes, and that's kind of what I want to talk about, because people, there's a lot of, when there's a lot of information out there, there's always a lot of correct information and a lot of incorrect information. And the incorrect information, for whatever reason, seems to get amplified because it's more sensational and it's more. Now, I'm not saying that there isn't some, very sensational stuff going on in condos right now, but from your perspective as a lender, and let me give you my perspective as a realtor first to set the. Condo communities are living, breathing organisms, and every one of them is different, just like people. right? Just in the Palm Beach County market, you can go from the spectrum of this condo community is in wonderful shape. Their condo fees aren't astronomically high because they weren't astronomically low before, and they've been fiscally responsible, and they've kept up with maintenance, and they've done all the right things. To the other side of the spectrum was these guys, they were paying $200 for 30 years, and they haven't fixed a damn thing in 30 years. And my God, this is like getting ready to implode, right? That's my perspective, and that's, I think, accurate enough to a point.
Right.
But in general terms, condo lending has become a little more problematic, has it not? Because of the overall. Again, I'm going to use Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae just to make it a small box, but because of the feeling of the large government entities that tend to be the drivers of that. Is that accurate?
It is accurate, but when you stop and think about it, if the agents that are listening, what I would say to you is it's really simple to get ahead of it. When you're going to list a condominium, you want to request the master insurance policy, you want to get a condo questionnaire form filled out, and you want to retrieve the budget. And all you have to do is have a lender review it so you know what offer to accept.
Well, there you go. So, and that was the way I was going to segue into you, is that the first thing that I tell my agents is, hey, let's run that past Matt, or we do have other lenders that we use, although Matt is our primary guy. But let's run it past Matt's team, and let's find out what the reality is before we just take a guess at it and throw it out there. Correct. Because that's what happens.
It starts at the listing.
Yes, it starts at the listing.
So if we just stem that, we look at the symptoms are the challenge of lending. The disease is the association.
No, I agree.
So if we look at the disease first, then we can know how to handle the symptoms.
Right, but nipping it in the bud is the easiest way to nip it in the bud is for listing agents, and we do have to, I guess, now separate agents. The agents are listing these things to actually go to the actual source,
correct,
and say, what is the actual truth,
and what's the down payment requirement,
and what's all get all that stuff. Are we 25%? Are we before putting it for sale, right? Because on the other side, because again, Chala one day when she decides to buy her condo with me or whatever she does, I'm going to have to go now and go, okay, let me research, because I'm sorry, I'm just going to say it straight out, I don't trust that listing agent necessarily to have all their facts straight. So then I'm going to go, okay, well, what am I going to do? Oh, hey, Matt, she's thinking about buying this.
Correct.
Run it for me, right?
Correct.
So, but that just becomes another part of the process of what a buyer's agent's going to have to do, or needs to, should do, for seller. And now that it is kind of written out that is part of the responsibility, we'll see how that actually works in fact. But so now, let's say that I have one of these condos that they've paid $200 for 30 years, and they haven't fixed a damn thing. Is there a possible lender solution from a mainstream lender outside of hard money, outside of whatever like that? Is there any world where that even fits into your box?
Meaning that they didn't pass their certification?
Well, they haven't passed their certification. Well, maybe not necessarily that, but let's just say that they don't have their reserves suck because now they're assessing everybody and trying to get everything, because that's really the bigger. That's again, we're talking about root causes or symptoms and whatever. So, but let's just say that let's say they've gotten their assessment. It's passed to whatever the minimum standards are, but their reserves are crap.
Okay.
Is there a world where that fits with you, or is there an option that you? Okay.
Absolutely.
And what would that option
typically,
be?
like on a primary residence,
yes,
25% down would avoid the need for condo review.
Right.
In terms of financials, now you can break those loans into two and get up to 90%, which is just 10% down.
Okay.
So there's other alternatives.
Okay.
If it's completely a non-conforming. Non-conventional condominium association, there's portfolio lending that we have that can cater to that too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much talking about non-conforming. I mean, it's but you do have a venue for that.
Oh yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Okay, and that and it's I'm kind of tooting Matt's horn here. I mean, he has a lot of tools in his toolbox, and that's one of the reasons. And this also comes down to one of the things that we've kind of continuously talked about and this is I don't even know which channel this is going to be on. I think this will be on both of them, but continuously talked about is that one of the reasons that I formed a team was, and I didn't. I mean, honestly, everybody just came to me as far as the actual agents, and then that's where that team came from. But I learned very early on that partnering with the professionals in the industry that do their thing, that do it very well and have the most tools in their box is a great way for me to pass on value to my customers. Because if you don't have those relationships and you don't know where to find those people, you can get lost very quickly in this business. And that goes right down to attorneys, CPAs, lenders,
insurance,
everything. I mean, and one of I was going to make a specific example. We have insurance, inspection companies, credible inspection companies. There's some that are more credible than others. But I built a large portion of my business on probate. I came up from auctions in a completely different world. But probate, and it's an unfortunate fact, but in South Florida, that probate is there's a lot of probate that goes on in Florida because people come in to retire. And once that started happening, I thought, well, if that's the case, then I need to make sure that if I have a question about whatever, then I know who to turn to. That was my segue into that. Calculating seller proceeds, and this is tangential to what you do, because seller proceeds is where the rubber hits the road on all the other stuff we've been talking about.
Right.
As a lender, how can you help me? Is there a way that you can help me with my sellers to express, okay, this is what your proceeds look like, and maybe if we do certain things with our lender, maybe we can enhance that amount or the viability of selling your home and all that sort of stuff, because that's kind of changed too. We used to always do the, let's get them pre-approved by Matt thing, or which is sort of a separate issue. Is there anything that you can do for me as a listing agent to help me communicate value to my sellers? I guess that's a question I've been meaning to ask for a long time. And I don't know why it took me so long to actually ask that question. But I don't know if you can or not. Can you?
Well, when you think about what sellers want, some of the most important factors, number one is certainty.
Yes.
Right? They want to know that when they sign that contract, it's going to close and fund successfully.
True.
So having short contingency timeframes, as you know, is critically important in the process.
Yeah.
As you know, we issue 5-day loan approvals, both FHA and conventional, in scale. We promote the fact of our agents matching a 5-day inspection period to that. So that gives a seller a hard contract day 6. In my opinion, I think that's really strong for a seller. The second part to that, if we're talking about net proceeds specifically, that's their second most important factor from our studies. It's all about understanding your side of what your value is in terms of a listing agent, and then putting it on the open market and having the understanding that I personally would coach a seller today of wanting to accept or wanting to see every single offer and not capping it based on compensation. So, for example, I know a lot of agents would call a listing agent today and say, how much is your seller willing to offer? And the listing agent says 2.5%. Let's just use that as an example. You see, why would you cap your audience?
If they pay 3, I'll come show it.
But watch. Why would you cap your audience? Ready for it? I'm the listing agent. Someone asked me, Matt, what are you offering for compensation? What do you want? What do you have with an agreement with your buyer? 3.5%. Great. Write up an offer and we'll either accept or counter.
Yeah, and I understand that.
See, that's the part that I don't understand why that's being confused by the agent community.
Well, so it's always been confused by the agent community. Here's part of the reason why. The agent community has always been a very say it the right way. In my opinion, the majority of the agent community has always led with fear. Their fear, not the seller's fear or the buyer. It's always been their fear. When I first started in this industry, what I thought was fear wasn't necessarily fear. It was just a palpable nervousness of not knowing. Pardon my French. We'll probably bleep that because Matt's on the show.
No,
keep it in.
I can handle it.
But it's been my experience that when an agent is talking to you, Matt, they are very fearful of you saying one thing to them. What is that thing, Matt?
Denied?
No. I'm talking about you as a person or child. If I'm trying to make you my customer, what do I not want to hear? No.
We don't hear no.
Right.
No.
So most agents are contextualizing the whole thing, and I'm talking about even someone that's been in a long time, about how do I keep this guy from saying no.
Right.
Whether that's on a seller side, buyer side, or whatever. I I think that if we put it in, and what you're saying leads into that, because if we put it into a box of, how about we just say, what can we do to best help our customer versus what can we do to best, not have somebody say no to us, or, whatever, what our best interests are, because then all of a sudden you go, oh, all of a sudden I'm actually doing good and I'm making money because I'm doing the job the right way.
Yeah.
But to answer your question is because most agents are still in that fear box, and they don't.
And it's also changing the muscle. The behavior pattern was asking a listing agent what you're offering to them.
Right, rather than what you're bringing to them.
That's right.
No, I agree. And that, again, that's going to be a sea change, and we'll see how that works out in the broader picture of who it helps and who it hurts. And again, like I said, I think that from my perspective, I love it. I love the change. I think it's more, that's great. I think there's more things we could do, and I don't think we really, got to the root issue of what the problem in the real estate industry is as far as agents go, but it's helpful. But I do like that. Now, I will say that you said all the things that I already know, and I already kind of lead with when I talk to my customers. What I meant to ask, maybe I put it in a little different way, is there, because we've evolved so much, and you're always coming up with things, and I look at I look at everything you send, but then I only register with so much. If I were to come to you and say, Mr. Weaver, I, Andrew Burr, I'm a listing agent, which I'm not. I'm a listing and a buying agent, because I don't think you can do one or the other without doing both,
right?
Or at least not well. Mr. Matt Weaver, what if I'm going to sit down with Chala and have a conversation with her to sell her house?
Right.
All right. Is there something that you can offer me that I can relate to her that helps me win that listing? Now, you answered it kind of, but you answered it more on the, I think it's more on the buyer side is where you answered it with the, because that's winning the offer, winning the deal. It does help a seller, but is there something that?
So we have two different strategies for listing agents in today's market. Mm-hmm. We have the Ultimate Listing Tool, which the Ultimate Listing Tool is designed for agents to pre-appraise their listing inventory, so they know where that property truly sits from an appraisal standpoint, because in fairness to agents, they can only get so far with a CMA.
Yeah.
And if we start with an appraised value, we all do know in today's market, it's not unusual to get a hair below appraised value in today's market.
Correct.
Which means you now have additional funds for either seller concessions or agent compensation to attract more buyer agents. Mm-hmm. So Ultimate Listing Tool is one of them. The second value proposition we have for listing agents is called Sell Like the Builders, where agents can promote their listings with temporary mortgage rate buy downs or just mortgage rate buy downs as a whole. And we have a whole program where we share in the cost with the seller. So we reduce the cost and enhance their listing by having below market interest or below market payments and below market interest rates.
And how is that going to now? We've already got this. We're lowering the rates, so the rates don't matter anymore. Is that right?
I haven't met a buyer that says it's too low.
Right. I got you. Okay. I just wanted to contextualize that. All right. And that is something that that I'm very interested in. And the reality is that in the seller's market, in the robust seller's market that we had, you didn't really need that.
These two were worthless.
Yeah. Well, I mean, all of it was worthless because you didn't really even. That's great. It goes right down to a home warranty. Is a home warranty, as a seller offering a home warranty, a value?
Right.
Well, when you can just sell the house, just decide one day to sell your house, not even take your clothes off the floor and sell it. No. Right. But as it becomes more difficult and more normal, which I mean, a normal market is a difficult market to sell in. That's just the bottom line. It's just what it is. It's not bread and circuses, right? And so, but I do think that that is a nice value add tool. You did mention the appraisal part, and so you're going to pay for the appraisal of my customer's home, or how are we?
No, we negotiated a fee, which is a reduced cost for the agent. So compliantly, the agent can pay for it, or the seller.
Wonderful.
But it's only $275.
I'll pay that every day to help me establish a value that's realistic, because that's also a big part of the problem. Has been a big part of the problem with these fluctuating markets, and it was the last time too. It's like you said, there's a CMA value, and then there's the bank's value, and the bank's value. And I'm not expecting you to answer this question. I think it changes on how much how much lending is going on, and sort of the direction that the lenders give the appraisers in general. And they don't go to an appraiser and say, make it a little looser or whatever. But I think that does
they have the sales contract.
Yeah, it does get broadcast. So the bottom line is that I think that's a wonderful, wonderful idea, and I'm glad you brought it up, because it's something that I actually have my team meetings every Thursday, and that's one of the things we're going to go over in the team meeting tomorrow. Is listen. It's a very small price to pay for certainty, or more certainty, right? And in a market like this, where everything is very uncertain because everything is all over the place, and this is out of my pocket too. This is not. I'm not telling the seller, hey, you need to,
Right.
This is something that I am more than happy to, because I want to be able to go with 100% confidence to Ch-Lo and go, hey, this is, I think, where we're at. And listen, I think we might be able to get this, but I want to be realistic. We got the appraisal. Can we still get you that? Yes. Is it going to be more difficult? Yes. Is there, how are we going to, so that you actually know how that process is going to work?
It's a great tool to bring into the listing presentation.
Particularly if you're working with, quote unquote, trophy property. Right. So, but that's a whole other story. But if you have a trophy property, or you think you do, call me and I'll let you know if it is, and then we'll go through this whole process. So this isn't Hot Wings, but it's kind of a Sean Evans thing. And we, since you came on, we'd love to give you the opportunity to kind of tell the customers, whatever you want to tell them. So he usually goes, this camera, this camera, this camera. We only have 3. We don't have 5. They're not all behind you and in front of you. But let the viewing audience know whatever you'd like to let them know, if there's something in particular you think is important.
Oh, I think it's important if you're considering buying today. I think your timing makes a whole lot of sense. We are, for the first time, in a interest rate environment that's actually going down. So it's a good time to consider making your plans today, as opposed to, 2 weeks or 3 weeks from now. Try and get ahead of perhaps whatever spike we could see in terms of home buyer interest. If you're a seller, I think it's a great time too, because watch, if you consider this, as we continue to see rates down, by the time Andrew can get your property up, get it up for sale and so on, it could be a few weeks out. So getting ahead of that makes a whole lot of sense. Whether you're looking to upgrade or downsize, I think overall our world, our economy, our real estate economy is going to be in for a great market. They're going to be, we're going to say, changing monetary policy to influence that. So no better time than today. And for all you buyer agents out there and all the agents out there, we thank you for your support from the Matt Weaver team. These changes, look at them from a positive perspective. I think you can do really well, and I think the buyers and the sellers will do equally as well.
Yeah, I agree. And to add to your point, right now, bottom line is we're in a buyer's market. Yeah. And now we're fiscally getting into a buyer's market, right? I think that in itself will promote a large amount of transactions again. The same thing we saw before. We've done these ups and downs before. And then what's going to happen is that we're going to probably turn right very quickly back into a balanced market. Right. I don't think we're going to jump into a seller's market again. I don't think it'll be as much of a buyer's market. Right. I think we'll go back into a balanced market, which is probably the healthiest thing for real estate in general and for people in general, because when you're doing this, nobody likes that, right?
Likes it.
If we can get back to some normality, which I think we will, I think the coming months we'll see that. I think that's good for everybody, and I do agree with you. And my saying, going back to the start of your pitch there, was I've always maintained, and anytime anybody has ever asked me this question, when is the best time to sell my home, or when is the best time to purchase a home? When it's the right time for you, when you need to, when you want to. Because if you wait for change, you could be waiting forever.
Oh yeah.
Right. So, and I actually know, I've got several people who's now are in the middle of leases that they re-signed, that are now going, oh my God, how can you help me get out of this lease? And I'm like, no, I told you before that this was probably going to happen, but unfortunately that's outside of my context. But if you wait too long, change will inevitably pass you by every single time.
Every single time.
All right, Matt, thank you very much for coming on.
Sir.
Ch-Lo, as always, thank you so much for being on point, and we will see you guys next time we see you here on either the Andrew Berg Group YouTube channel or Living in South Florida Does Not Suck. Have a great one. Hey guys, thank you for tuning in to Living in South Florida Does Not Suck. Please do subscribe with the notification bell on. If you liked today's guest, you can also get more information about them right here. Like magic, it will appear. Anyways, we love having you here. We love having your friends here. Shout it out from the rooftops. Like us on Facebook. Share it with your friends. We'll see you soon here in beautiful, sunny South Florida.